The metal handcuffs cut deep into Marcus Jefferson's wrists as he sat in that cold interrogation room, staring directly into the eyes of the three officers who had just destroyed his life. Officer Bradley Morrison smirked from across the table. Officer Kyle Brennan leaned back in his chair, arms crossed, looking satisfied. Officer Tony Ricci wouldn't even make eye contact, but Mac could see the guilt written all over his face. These three men had no idea what they had just done. They thought they'd caught another black man they could frame for fun. They thought this was just another game to them. What they didn't know would change everything in the next 72 hours. Imagine being framed by the very people sworn to protect you. Mac wasn't just any ordinary citizen. While these officers were planting drugs in his apartment and laughing about their street justice bingo game, they had actually targeted someone who could bring their entire world crashing down. Someone whose real identity would send shockwaves through every law enforcement agency in Ohio. Have you ever felt powerless against the system? Have you ever wondered what you would do if corrupt officers decided to make you their next victim? Have you ever asked yourself how many innocent people are sitting behind bars right now because some badge-wearing criminals thought it would be entertaining to destroy lives? This is exactly what happened to Mac. Three racist officers thought they could play games with a black man's freedom. They planted 2 kilograms of cocaine and an illegal gun in his home. They wrote up false reports. They high-fived each other in the hallway, thinking they'd just scored another easy conviction. But here's what makes this story different from every other case of police corruption you've heard about. Mac was carrying a secret that would turn this entire case upside down. A secret so big that when the truth finally came out in that courtroom, it would expose not just these 3 officers, but an entire network of corruption that had been destroying families for years. Before we go any further, I need to ask you something. Drop a comment below and tell me, have you or someone you know ever been treated unfairly by police? Your story matters, and sharing it helps others realize they're not alone in this fight. Because what happened next in this courtroom would prove that sometimes justice comes from the most unexpected places, and sometimes the hunter becomes the hunted in ways no one could have predicted. To everyone in Riverside, Ohio, Marcus Jefferson was just Mac, a quiet black man who lived in apartment 4B on Elm Street. He worked odd jobs, kept to himself, and seemed like he was trying to get his life together after some hard times. His neighbors saw him leave at strange hours, sometimes dressed in work clothes, sometimes in a suit. They figured he was hustling, doing whatever it took to pay the bills. But Mac's real story was completely different. Special Agent Marcus Jefferson had been working for the CIA's Domestic Operations Division for 15 years. He specialized in deep cover work, the kind of assignments where you disappear into a community for months or even years. His current mission was tracking a drug network that moved product from Mexico through Ohio and into Canada. Intelligence suggested this wasn't just about drugs. There were connections to international money laundering and possibly terrorism funding. Mac's apartment wasn't really his home. It was a carefully constructed base of operations. The beat-up Honda in his driveway had hidden cameras and recording equipment. The cell phone he carried around the neighborhood was actually a sophisticated communication device that kept him connected to CIA headquarters in Virginia. Every conversation, every meeting, every movement was part of a massive investigation that could save lives and stop millions of dollars in illegal activity. His handlers had chosen Riverside because it was the perfect cover. A small industrial city where people minded their own business, where a black man working multiple jobs wouldn't stand out, where the local police department was small enough that federal agents could operate without much interference. That's where they made their first mistake. The Riverside Police Department had 3 officers who worked the night shift together: Bradley Morrison, Kyle Brennan, and Tony Ricci. These men had been partners for 4 years, and in that time, they had developed what they called street justice bingo. The rules were simple and sick. Each officer would pick a target, always a black man living in the poorer sections of town. They would watch their target for weeks, learning their routines, their weaknesses, their habits. Then they would plant evidence, make an arrest, and see who could get the most serious charges to stick. They kept score on a whiteboard in Morrison's garage. Morrison was the leader, a 12-year cop who had grown bitter about his career stalling out in a small town. Brennan was the muscle, a former high school football player who loved the power that came with the badge. Ricci was the youngest, only 6 years on the force, and the most uncomfortable with their game, but too scared to speak up. They had already destroyed 8 families with their twisted competition. Parents separated from children. Breadwinners sent to prison on fake charges. Lives ruined because 3 racist cops thought it was fun. When they first noticed Mac, he seemed like the perfect target. He lived alone, kept weird hours, and had visitors who looked like they might be involved in illegal activity. What the officers didn't know was that those suspicious visitors were actually other federal agents and informants working the same case. For 3 weeks, the officers followed Mac. They photographed his apartment building. They noted when he left and when he returned. They even broke into his car one night to plant a GPS tracker. Morrison was convinced Mac was dealing drugs. Brennan thought he might be running stolen goods. Ricci just wanted to find someone else to target, but he was outvoted. None of them bothered to run a proper background check. None of them thought to contact federal databases. They were so focused on their game that they never considered Mac might be more than he appeared. Here's my question for you. How do we hold police officers accountable when they abuse their power? Drop a comment and let me know what you think needs to change in our justice system. The trap was set. Mac had no idea he was being watched by the very people who were supposed to protect him. August 15th, 2019 started like any other day for Mac. He left his apartment at 7 a.m. to meet with an informant downtown. What he didn't know was that Morrison, Brennan, and Ricci were already in position. At 9:30 a.m., while Mac was 3 miles away getting coffee with his CIA contact, the 3 officers used a fake warrant to enter his apartment. Morrison carried a duffel bag filled with their planted evidence. Brennan kept watch while Ricci reluctantly helped place the items. They planted 2 kilograms of pure cocaine in Mac's bedroom closet, hidden inside an old shoebox. They planted an unregistered .38 caliber pistol under his mattress. They even planted small bags of marijuana in his kitchen drawers to make it look like he was dealing multiple drugs. Morrison had bought everything from evidence lockers of old cases, drugs, and weapons that were supposed to be destroyed but never were. The officers took photos, wrote detailed reports, and called for backup. By the time Mac returned home at 11 a.m., 6 police cars were waiting outside his building. Mac's CIA training kicked in immediately. He knew something was wrong when he saw the cars, but he couldn't break character. He had to act like a regular citizen who was confused and scared. When Officer Morrison approached him with handcuffs, Mac played his role perfectly. "What's going on, officer? I haven't done anything wrong." "We'll see about that," Morrison replied, clearly enjoying himself. Inside the apartment, Mac watched in shock as officers discovered the planted evidence. His mind was racing. He knew the drugs weren't his. He knew the gun wasn't his. But he also knew that breaking his cover could destroy a 2-year investigation that was on the verge of taking down a major criminal network. The evidence was overwhelming. 2 kilograms of cocaine carried a mandatory minimum sentence of 10 years in Ohio. Add the illegal weapon and his fake criminal history, and Mac was looking at 25 years to life. The arrest sent shockwaves through the neighborhood. Mac's neighbors had known him as a quiet, respectful man who kept to himself. Seeing him led away in handcuffs confused and upset many residents. Mrs. Rodriguez from apartment 2A couldn't believe it. "Mac was always so polite. He helped me carry groceries just last week." Local activist Keisha Brooks heard about the arrest through her network of community contacts. She had been documenting police misconduct in Riverside for 3 years, and Mac's case immediately caught her attention. Something about the arrest felt too clean, too perfect. Brooks started posting about the case on Facebook and Twitter. Another black man arrested in Riverside with convenient evidence. When will this pattern stop? Her posts began getting shared across social media platforms. The media attention made Mac's situation even more complicated. His CIA superiors had planned to quietly resolve the situation through federal channels, but public pressure was forcing the case toward trial. Mac sat in county jail, maintaining his cover identity while facing the possibility of spending the rest of his life behind bars for crimes he didn't commit. While Mac sat in his jail cell, his CIA handlers were working frantically to save their agent without blowing his cover. Deputy Director Collins had 3 options: quietly pressure the local prosecutor to drop charges, arrange for Mac to be transferred to federal custody, or let the case proceed and hope Mac could maintain his identity. All 3 options were falling apart fast. The prosecutor, District Attorney Patricia Wells, was an ambitious politician who saw Mac's case as a career-making opportunity. She refused to back down, especially with media attention growing. Federal pressure would only raise more questions. Keisha Brooks' social media campaign was gaining momentum. Her hashtag #JusticeForMac was trending locally, with posts reaching thousands of people across Ohio. News outlets started picking up the story. What began as a local arrest was becoming a symbol of police corruption and racial profiling. When CNN ran a segment titled "Another Black Man Framed in Small-Town America," Mac's case officially went national. Protesters gathered outside the Riverside courthouse. Civil rights organizations offered legal support. The CIA's quiet resolution was no longer possible. That's when David Chun entered the story. Chun was a 28-year-old public defender, fresh out of law school and assigned to Mac's case. Most lawyers would have seen the evidence and pushed for a plea deal. Chun was different. He had grown up in Cleveland, witnessed police misconduct firsthand, and believed his clients deserved real representation. When Chun first met Mac in jail, he expected to find a man broken by the system. Instead, Mac was calm, composed, almost professional in how he discussed his case. This struck Chun as odd. Most innocent clients are angry or scared, Chun told his supervisor later. Mac acts like he's analyzing evidence for someone else's case. Chun spent weeks reviewing the police reports, and that's when he started finding problems. The timeline didn't match. The officers claimed they obtained their warrant at 9:15 a.m., but the judge who supposedly signed it was in court until 9:45 a.m. The photos of the evidence showed inconsistent lighting, suggesting they were taken at different times. Most concerning was Officer Ricci's report. While Morrison and Brennan wrote detailed accounts of the search, Ricci's report was vague and contained different details about where evidence was found. Chun tried to discuss these inconsistencies with Mac, but his client remained strangely distant. Mac would listen, nod, ask intelligent questions, but never showed the emotional investment Chun expected from someone facing life in prison. "I trust you to handle this," Mac would say. "Do what you think is best." Chun couldn't understand it. Here was a man whose life was at stake, acting like the outcome didn't matter to him personally. Meanwhile, the prosecution was building what they believed was an airtight case. Morrison, Brennan, and Ricci rehearsed their testimony. The evidence was cataloged and photographed. District Attorney Wells prepared for what she thought would be an easy conviction. If this story is opening your eyes to how corrupt some officers can be, please share this video. The more people who know about cases like Mac's, the harder it becomes for bad cops to get away with their crimes. Neither side knew they were preparing for a trial that would change everything. November 18, 2019. The Riverside County Courthouse was packed. Media crews lined the hallway. Protesters held signs reading "Justice for Mac" outside the building. Inside Courtroom 3B, District Attorney Patricia Wells stood before the jury with complete confidence. "Ladies and gentlemen, this is a textbook case," Wells began her opening statement. "The defendant, Marcus Jefferson, was caught red-handed with 2 kilograms of cocaine and an illegal firearm. The evidence is clear, the testimony is solid, and the facts speak for themselves." She pointed toward Mac, who sat quietly at the defense table in his orange jumpsuit. "Don't let sympathy cloud your judgment. Drug dealers destroy communities, and this man was caught with enough narcotics to supply half of Riverside." David Chin's opening was different. He didn't promise the jury that Mac was innocent. Instead, he asked them to pay attention to details. "I'm going to ask you to listen carefully to every word the officers say," Chin told the jury. "Because when you do, you'll start to notice things that don't add up. Things that should concern every citizen who believes in real justice." Day 1 belonged to the prosecution. Wells called Officer Morrison to the stand first, and he delivered exactly what she needed. Morrison was polished, confident, and convincing. He walked the jury through the investigation step by step. He explained how they had received anonymous tips about drug activity at Mac's apartment. He described obtaining the search warrant through proper channels. He detailed finding the cocaine hidden in the bedroom closet and the gun under the mattress. "Officer Morrison," Wells asked, "in your 12 years of experience, how would you characterize this arrest?" "Textbook, ma'am. Clean search, solid evidence, proper procedure throughout." The jury nodded along. Morrison seemed honest, professional, experienced. When he finished testifying, it looked like Mac was headed to prison. Day 2 started with Officers Brennan and Ricci supporting Morrison's story. Brennan was confident like his partner, describing the search in detail and explaining how they documented every piece of evidence. But when Chin started his cross-examination, things began to shift. Chin had studied every police report, every photograph, every timestamp. He started with small questions that seemed innocent. "Officer Morrison, you stated you obtained the warrant at 9:15 a.m. Can you tell me which judge signed it?" "Judge Martinez signed the warrant." "And where was Judge Martinez at 9:15 that morning?" Morrison hesitated. "I'm not sure I understand the question." Chin walked to his table and picked up a document. Court records showed Judge Martinez was hearing cases from 8:30 a.m. until 9:45 a.m. that day. "So how did he sign your warrant at 9:15? Wells objected, but the damage was done. The jury started paying closer attention. Chin continued finding small inconsistencies. The lighting and evidence photos didn't match. The timeline of events had gaps. Most importantly, Officer Ricci's report contained different details than his partner's reports. By the end of Day 2, Chin had planted seeds of doubt. Day 3 was when everything changed. Chin called Officer Ricci to the stand for cross-examination. From the moment Ricci sat down, it was clear he was nervous. His hands shook. He avoided eye contact with Morrison and Brennan. Chin started gently, asking Ricci to walk through his version of events. But as the questioning continued, Ricci's story began to differ from his written report. "Officer Ricci, your report states the cocaine was found in a shoebox in the closet, but your partner's reports say it was found in a cardboard box. Which is correct?" Ricci wiped sweat from his forehead. It was a shoebox." "No, wait. Maybe it was cardboard. I'm not sure." Chin pressed harder. "How many times have you and your partners conducted searches in predominantly black neighborhoods this year?" "I don't keep track of demographics." "Really?" "Because your sergeant's records show 47 searches in black neighborhoods versus 3 in white neighborhoods. Does that seem proportional to you?" Wells objected, but Chin was building momentum. "Officer Ricci, why did you and your partners choose to target Marcus Jefferson specifically?" Ricci looked panicked. He glanced at Morrison, who was staring at him intensely from the gallery. We have been watching him. For investigative purposes. Investigative purposes? Or were you watching him for recreational purposes? The words slipped out before Ricci could stop them. Well, yes, recreational purposes, but also, the courtroom erupted. Judge Williams banged his gavel repeatedly. Morrison's face went white. Brennan started whispering urgently to his lawyer. Chin had just gotten a police officer to admit they were targeting Mac for recreation. What exactly do you mean by recreational purposes, Officer Ricci? If this story is showing you how corruption can be exposed through careful questioning, hit that like button. Stories like this need to be heard by as many people as possible. Ricci realized his mistake, but it was too late. The truth was starting to come out. Officer Ricci looked around the silent courtroom, realizing he had just destroyed everything. His voice cracked as he tried to explain himself. I didn't mean recreational like that. I meant, David Chin cut him off. Officer Ricci, what exactly is street justice bingo? The question hit Ricci like a physical blow. Morrison jumped up from his seat in the gallery, but it was too late. Under the pressure of cross-examination and the weight of his guilt, Ricci completely broke down. It's a game, he whispered, tears starting to flow. We pick targets and see who can get the most convictions. Morrison keeps score on a whiteboard in his garage. The courtroom exploded. Judge Williams banged his gavel repeatedly, shouting for order. Jury members gasped and looked at each other in shock. Keisha Brooks, sitting in the front row, started recording on her phone before bailiffs could stop her. Chun pressed his advantage. How many people have you framed, Officer Ricci? I don't know exactly. Maybe 8. Maybe more. 8 families destroyed for your entertainment. Ricci was sobbing now. Morrison said it was justice. He said we were cleaning up the streets. But it wasn't justice. We planted evidence. We lied in reports. We ruined innocent people. District Attorney Wells tried desperately to control the damage, objecting to every question, but Judge Williams was allowing Chun to continue. The truth was finally coming out. Tell the court about Marcus Jefferson specifically. Why did you target him? He seemed like an easy mark. Lived alone, kept strange hours. Morrison thought he was dealing drugs, but we never saw any real evidence. So we decided to make our own evidence. The revelation sent shockwaves through the packed courtroom. Max sat at the defense table, watching his entire cover operation collapse in real time. He knew that within hours, his CIA identity would need to be revealed to prevent a complete miscarriage of justice. But Mac also knew something else. 43 other families had been destroyed by these officers. Innocent men were sitting in prison right now because of street justice bingo. If he maintained his cover, those men would stay locked up. If he revealed his identity, everyone would go free. The choice was clear. As Ricci finished his confession and the judge called for a recess, Mac made his decision. He stood up from the defense table, his posture completely different from the broken man who had been sitting there for 3 days. Your Honor, Mac said, his voice strong and professional for the first time since his arrest. I need to address the court. Judge Williams looked confused. Mr. Jefferson, your attorney hasn't indicated you wish to testify. I'm not testifying as a defendant, Your Honor. I am Special Agent Marcus Jefferson of the Central Intelligence Agency, and I need to speak with federal prosecutors immediately. The courtroom fell completely silent. Morrison's face went white. Brennan started backing toward the exit. District Attorney Wells dropped her legal pad. Mac continued, I've been working undercover for 2 years on a federal investigation. These officers had no idea who they were framing. Chaos erupted again, but this time it was different. Reporters rushed toward the exits to file breaking news stories. Keisha Brooks was live streaming to thousands of viewers. Judge Williams was calling for federal marshals. Within minutes, CNN was running a breaking news banner. CIA agent framed by corrupt cops in Ohio. The story was trending on Twitter before Mac even finished speaking. The three officers who thought they were playing a harmless game had just attacked a federal agent. Their world was about to collapse completely. Within 24 hours of Mac's revelation, federal agents swarmed Riverside. The FBI took complete control of the investigation, turning it from a local drug case into a massive civil rights violation probe. Special Agent Rebecca Torres led the federal task force. Her team immediately began reviewing every arrest Morrison, Brennan, and Ricci had made over the past 5 years. What they found was worse than anyone expected. 43 families had been destroyed by street justice bingo. Innocent fathers were serving decades in prison. Children had grown up without parents. Families had lost homes, jobs, and hope because 3 racist cops thought destroying lives was entertaining. The FBI set up a hotline for victims to come forward. Within a week, they received over 200 calls from people who suspected they had been framed by the Riverside Police Department. Marcus Williams, serving 15 years for drug trafficking he didn't commit, was the first to be released. He walked out of prison after 3 years behind bars, tears streaming down his face as he hugged his daughter for the first time since her 8th birthday. The 3 officers faced federal charges for civil rights violations, conspiracy, evidence tampering, and perjury. Morrison received 18 years in federal prison. Brennan got 15 years. Ricci, who cooperated fully with investigators, received 12 years. Their convictions sent a message throughout Ohio law enforcement. Framing innocent people would have serious consequences. Mac's CIA career was over. His cover was blown, his operation was compromised, and the drug network he'd spent 2 years tracking had disappeared. But Mac never regretted his decision. Some things are more important than one investigation, he told Congress during his testimony 6 months later. 43 families deserve justice more than I deserve to keep my job. Mac's congressional appearance led to new oversight requirements for local police departments receiving federal funding. Body cameras became mandatory in Ohio. Independent review boards were established to investigate misconduct claims. In Riverside, the community slowly began healing. Keisha Brooks was elected to the city council, running on a platform of police accountability. The new police chief, hired from outside the department, implemented community policing programs and transparency measures. Mac opened a private investigation firm in Cleveland, specializing in wrongful conviction cases. He uses his CIA training to help other victims of police corruption find justice. If stories like this matter to you, subscribe to our channel. We're committed to sharing true stories of resilience, justice, and people who refuse to give up when the system failed them. The 3 officers who thought they were untouchable learned that justice, sometimes delayed, is never truly denied. Mac's story teaches us that racial profiling doesn't just hurt ordinary citizens. It can target anyone, even those serving their country at the highest levels. No badge, no uniform, no government clearance protects Black Americans from being seen as criminals first and people second. Mac showed incredible strength by maintaining his cover for months while facing life in prison. Most people would have broken under that pressure, but he understood that his sacrifice could save dozens of other families from the same fate. This case proves why we need strong oversight of police departments. Without independent review boards, body cameras, and federal monitoring, corrupt officers can destroy lives with no consequences. Transparency isn't just a nice idea, it's essential for justice. Community activism made the difference here. Keisha Brooks refused to let Mac's case disappear quietly. Her social media campaign and relentless advocacy forced this story into the spotlight where it couldn't be covered up. Mac's courage to reveal his identity, knowing it would end his career, shows us what real heroism looks like. Sometimes doing the right thing costs everything, but it's still the right thing to do. Share this story with everyone you know. Comment below with your thoughts on police accountability. And subscribe for more true stories of people who fought back against injustice and won.